Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel today. My name is Mohammed Mahmoud. I'm the director of the Climate and Water Program at the Middle East Institute. And today's panel discussion is going to be on effective groundwater management in North Africa. It's, I think, a timely topic and for a number of reasons, as we are virtually a month away from the COP27 meeting in Egypt and Sharm el-Sheikh. Two topics and themes that are going to be very much in focus is both adaptation and water resources management. I think this topic today is going to cover both of those. And it's really not a topic that we cover a lot in our circles. I think we often forget the importance of groundwater, and certainly the importance of groundwater in countries in North Africa, certainly towards the Maghreb region. And so I'm happy that we're able to cover that today and showcase some of the issues and important aspects of groundwater resources management in this very important part of the world in North Africa. So let me introduce our moderator today for the panel, who will then introduce our guests and panelists. Our moderator today is our own Malak Al-Taib. She's an analyst, independent writer and researcher originally from Libya. She's currently based in Paris, France. She has a master's degree in environmental policy from Sciences Po University in Paris, and also a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Tripoli, Libya. She's a blogger and she manages her own blog site, which is The Libyan Wonder. It's very interesting. I encourage you to check it out for all her views on all things. And she's also one of our non-resident scholars in the Climate and Water Program. So happy to have her, happy to have all our panelists and guests. And with that, I will hand it off to Malak to lead us into our topic and discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, and welcome everyone, and welcome to our speakers. I'm so excited today to discuss the topic of groundwater aquifers, especially in North Africa. We know that the level of water scarcity is increasing in the MENA region, but when we focus on the North African region, is at an alarming rate. Before I introduce my speakers today, I want to just highlight a few points. The panel will run for about 1 hour, and throughout this hour, I welcome the audience to submit your questions in the Q&A box. So please feel free to send your questions so I can pass them to our speakers through the session. So let's start the discussion, and let me introduce first our speakers for today's panel before we start the roll of questions. First, we have Dr. Youssef Abrozin. He is the International Water Management Institute's country representative for Egypt and the regional representative for the Middle East and North Africa. He brings a diversified experience in resilience building across the water and agricultural value chains in North Africa, West Africa, and Southern Europe. Dr. Youssef strives to help stakeholders in the region to move towards growth and sustainable development through innovative science-based water solutions. We also have Dr. Abdulrahim Mahwesh. Dr. Abdulrahim Mahwesh is the Executive Director of the Joint Authority for the Study and Development of the Nubian Sandstone Aquifer System since 2018 in Libya. He's also a hydrologist, a groundwater modeler, and a staff member in the Geology Department in the Faculty of Science at Tripoli University, Libya. He contributed through his work as a team member to implementing many national and regional research projects. In addition to scientific research in hydrology and groundwater modeling, his interests extend to the field of environmental geology. So welcome to our speakers in today's panel to discuss groundwater aquifers in the North African region. So to start the question series, in the light of water scarcity, the reliance on groundwater is increasing globally, and its full potential remains largely untapped in many parts around the world. But when we focus about the North African region, which is considered an arid and semi-arid lands, groundwater is often the main source of water supply to meet most of the local demand. Thus, this is putting more pressure on local aquifers. My first question goes to Dr. Youssef. From your experience and work in the intersection with agribusiness, water, sustainability, and climate change, what are the current management challenges for groundwater aquifers in North Africa, and how can we make this invisible resource more visible? The floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Malak, and thanks to the Middle East Institute for the invitation, and also for picking this topic for today's discussion, which is very important, strategic for North Africa and many other regions in the world. Regarding your question, so we all know that North Africa is hotspot for climate change, and it is one of the most scarce areas in terms of water resources. And meanwhile, groundwater in this part of the world is very strategic. In some part of this area, it is sometimes the unique source of water for some people. And even if it is not the unique, it is a security resource for the others, because we all know that because of climate change, the rainfall is uneven in terms of temporal distribution. And when rain is absent, people are generally relying on groundwater. So this is why it is a strategic resource in North Africa and also in other parts of the world. The main challenges of managing this resource is coming from, let's say, two big group of sources. There are challenges related to the nature of this resource and also the natural part of this resource. And the other group of challenges are related to the lack of management tools and solutions. Let's go for the first group, which is related to nature. As you said in your introduction, it is an invisible resource, and this is one of the big challenges. We don't see it, so it is very hard to monitor it, to supervise it, and the reality in our region in North Africa, we do have a weak gauging network. So we don't have much of piezometric stations, for example, and there are few studies who are focusing on groundwater to first understand the processes behind that and this resource, and also to monitor its evolution across the space and also across time. For me, this is the first part. The second part, always under the umbrella of natural factors of this difficulty, we have climate change. Since the climate is changing, there are a lot of impact on the water cycle, and obviously the groundwater aquifers are impacted. We observe in many parts of North Africa a decrease in terms of recharge, nature recharge, which make the durability of this resource under question in many parts of North Africa. Regarding anthropogenic parts or factors that makes this resource very hard to be managed, since it is hard to monitor, the government or policymakers are always challenged by the fact they can't have full control or supervision on the, for example, depletion rates. And when the depletion is not controlled, so for example, the farmers and the agribusiness companies are not really taking into consideration the sustainability in some situations. So when they are focusing mainly on profit and increasing yield, increasing production amounts. So yeah, for me, these are the two big, let's say, big groups of challenges that makes groundwater management very hard in our region.
Thank you so much, Dr. Youssef. Definitely, it's one of the most crucial issues in our time today for the North African region. Management and governance play a huge role in this aspect. And you mentioned the difficulty of monitoring at times of these resources within the region. So this will help me jump to the second question to Dr. Abdelrahim. So Dr. Abdelrahim, when we address groundwater aquifers, studying groundwater aquifers depend heavily on scientific research. Given your experience in scientific research in hydrology, and groundwater modeling, and also being the executive director of the Joint Authority for Studying and the Development of the Nubian Sandstone Aquifer System in Libya. My question to you, how could local scientific research be effectively used in groundwater management? And what are the tools to connect theoretical research with the practice, given the role of higher education institutions? And you can give me an example even focused on Libya in this case. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Malak, for inviting me to participate this the panel of today. As you have mentioned, and Dr. Yusuf, the groundwater resource is invisible, and it is a hidden resource. So the dealing with this with water resource is very difficult. It's more difficult than the surface water, whose dimensions are available, for example, for the rivers or lakes. It's easy to study them with being in direct physical contact. But the difficulties in the researches and the studying of groundwater is completely definitely very difficult, because it is a hidden resource, and we'll have to deal with them without being in direct physical context. So that's why we are using some techniques such as groundwater modeling. Groundwater modelings are not an exact representation of the aquifer properties, but they are approximation, and they give mostly very good results and predictions for the future. So Libya is one of the poorest countries in water resources, as you know, and depends more than 97% of the water demand depends on groundwater. There is no rivers, the rainfall is limited to the coastal area, and the groundwater is the main resource for the different water demands of the water uses, mostly, or especially for the agricultural activities. So our experience in the Joint Authority for the Study and Development of the Nubian Sandstone Aquifer System, as you know, that this Nubian aquifer system is very, very huge aquifer system. It's one of the most famous shared aquifer systems in the world. This system shared by 4 African countries, which are Libya, Sudan, Chad, and Egypt, and it covers an area of 2.2 million square kilometers. In the past, before 20 years ago, a regional groundwater model has been implemented by the authority, and it has given a very good expectation and directions towards the best investments or the best exploitation of this. Some people, they consider this is a non-renewable resource. According to the age dating, the water is not renewable or non-renewable. It's a fossil water. Sometimes we call it as a fossil water, and according to the age dating, it's more than 30,000 years old from the Pleistocene ages. So the groundwater modeling has been used to predict the effects of the expansion, agricultural expansion in the 4 countries, in Libya, in Egypt, and in Sudan and Chad. And also local models have been used to simulate the solute transport process in the groundwater. As you know, that for the groundwater, we're dealing with 2 main processes, which are the groundwater flow and the groundwater solute transport. And the solute transport is related to the pollution of the groundwater, and this resource, which is the Nubian aquifers, is being subjected to pollution from the sewage water, from the oil activity, especially in Libya, and other environmental impacts. The most one of the most important challenges is the seawater intrusion for the coastal aquifers here in Libya. Libya has a very long coast, about 2,000 kilometers long. And as a result of the overexploitation of the groundwater at the coastal areas, there is a serious problem, which is the seawater intrusion, and it's expanding every 10 years, according to the modeling studies. So these modeling techniques are very useful indeed for the evaluation of the groundwater from two sides, either from the volume or from the quantitative evaluation and prediction for the near future expansion, or either for the qualitative point of view. And that's all from me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for the intervention. And this will help me address the second question, given the high role of groundwater modeling within the scientific research and the management scheme, given your work. But now I will address my next question to Dr. Youssef. Given your experience with different stakeholders, what is the role of international and regional cooperation in the scheme of sustainable groundwater management? And if you can give us an example that can support the answer, it would be great. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very interesting question. Indeed, there are a lot of things that can be addressed through international cooperation. I can start by the answer of my colleague Dr. Abdelrahim, as he took us through the role of research and development through modeling, for example, to understand the groundwater. So setting a common research and development projects across the aquifer, especially if it's transboundary aquifer, is very important, because since it is the same aquifer, but being across 2 or 3 or 4 countries, this will be given a chance to join all forces, which make research more effective and more efficient. So setting up common or joint research and development projects around this common aquifer is very important. It's something that can be done through international cooperation. The other thing that can be done through the effective international cooperation is the data and knowledge sharing. Sometimes we can have countries with uneven access to data and uneven access to knowledge. So sharing data, for example, between countries will definitely help to monitor the whole system of the aquifer, whatever the part of the aquifer is addressed from. So also sharing the knowledge through sharing information, also sharing how this aquifer or the resources related to the aquifer are managed from country to country, and also building capacities of all countries around this aquifer is very important, something that can be done through international cooperation. In this regard, I can mention something that we are implementing at EMI, International Water Management Institute. So we are developing a set of trainings, capacity building for countries in the MENA region, including North Africa, obviously, to, for example, monitor water resources using a water accounting plus tool, which is largely relying on remote sensing. And my colleague, Dr. Abdelrahim, mentioned modeling, and modeling can be teamed up with remote sensing to expand the knowledge and also to monitor mainly the use of water resources, including groundwater. The other thing that I can mention in terms of added value of international cooperation is the common action. So if we know what can be done in terms of actions, in terms of strategies, plans, conservation practices, for example. It will be, the action will be with low value if just one part is applying them and the other one or the other country is not really doing the same. So common action in terms of conservation strategies and conservation plans between all regions, areas, and also countries sharing the same groundwater aquifers is crucial here. Again, here I can mention a lot of examples where, for example, nature-based solutions are applied across very big areas to preserve the ecosystems related to groundwater, and also to increase the productivity, because at the end of the day, this groundwater will be used, but let's increase the added value from its use by increasing the productivity. And there are lots of programs in the region, basically in Egypt, which can be considered as North Africa as well as Middle East. So basically, we as IMI, we are implementing a big program on nature-based solutions using a lot of solutions like water harvest, rangeland, agroforestry, etc., to increase recharge, for example, as well as to increase the productivity of each cubic meter used from the pumped from the groundwater. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Youssef, for this insightful addition to this question. And definitely knowledge sharing is one of the important tools in terms of international cooperations, but we need to keep in mind again that building capacities across the North African region is important, so we can actually use the local research and also local skills to manage these aquifers better, given the rising impact of climate change. But before we continue with the questions, let me introduce our third speaker, Mr. Hamdi Hashad. Mr. Hamdi Hashad is an environmental expert with Frederick Naumann Foundation in their Tunisia and Libya offices. He has worked on several projects about climate change with the UNDP, GIZ, and the Ministry of the Environment and Local Affairs in Tunisia. Mr. Hamdi began to offer training and awareness for dozens of environmental NGOs based in Tunisia, Algeria, Jordan, Egypt, and Qatar since 2015. Now I will be addressing my next question to Mr. Hamdi, given his work within the local context, but also with international organizations that have been addressing climate change and environmental issues. My question to you, Mr. Hamdi, what kind of role the local communities play in the management of groundwater aquifers? And maybe you can give us an example from one of the countries you worked in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry for the delay. Actually, we have a chaotic situation here, fuel shortage, everyone doing the queue, so sorry for the delay. Talking about groundwater, we have conducted a study recently with the UNDP regarding the situation of the groundwater in the south of Tunisia, and we talk south of Tunisia, actually, this includes Libya and Algeria as well. So what we have noted that the groundwater is overused by 70%. So we have over using this. Since the revolution 2011, the percentage of the oases have extended by 400%. And that is significant for using water to let's survive the oasis in the south of Tunisia. But what we have noted that the overuse of the water, and especially the groundwater, and it's shared by Algeria and Libya and Tunisia, is starting to make a trouble. Actually, in the local, here at the local level in Tunisia, because community now is, before it wasn't included in taking decision on how to manage this resource. But now, what we have noticed, if we include this population to taking decision is not also a good idea, because they have a perspective and only the economic perspective, not taking into consideration that it's not renewable resource, and we should take that into consideration. We need to have some technique at least to make it and to make it at least we can revive this resource. But here we start to notice that you have some trouble, some conflict, and even some conflict was violent conflict, and that it causes some victims and some injury and some clash between a region in south of Tunisia, and that we try to make a mapping how to avoid a future conflict between this local population here in Tunisia, and maybe can evaluate, it can be developed into conflict between Tunisia and Libya from the part, and Tunisia and Algeria from other part, even between Algeria and Libya from other parts, because it's a shared resource actually. So what we try now to take into consideration to unify at least the same management way of this resource, at least for between the three countries. But due that is Libya now not the politically is not stable, so it's not so easy to have one opinion about how to can manage this shared resource as a sustainable way. But now, what we try to take into consideration now to limit the use of this resource for the moment until we can have a clear idea what can happen next. Because as we notice, if there are no water, it's mean no development, no economic development. It's mean no water. It will be social conflict. It's mean no water. It will be the government will be weak in this place and not able to offering some resources. So what we try now, at least we do the mapping of the future conflict and how it can be more evolutive, and to try to limit it. So we try to expect and anticipate a kind of conflict to avoid at least the worst scenario. And actually it's not easy because they are not we are not sharing the same opinion in Tunisia and Libya and Algeria. Every country have the same strategy, they have the same interest of how to using with efficiency this resource. So what we have a lake now, that is absence of international institution. It can manage between these three countries efficient way how to use this water for the future, but now it's not existing. But now we're starting to notice that it will be a problem for the coming years, how maybe Libya will develop overuse for this resource, or Tunisia do the same, or Algeria do the same. So what kind of this, the collaboration and the shared resource, how can be the image, how can be the real situation for that in the coming futures? We try to avoid at least geopolitical conflict between these three countries, and that we are sharing the same interests. We have almost the same culture, the same religion, the same racial ethnicity. But what we make sure that we're not having conflict about water in the coming years? That's the question now.
Definitely. Thank you so much for this intervention, because you mentioned water is now becoming, is used actually as a political threat, and that conflict can actually happen in the future because of water, as described as the blue gold. And it's not going to be only conflict around the black gold, which is oil. So I want to move to the next question for the three panelists, and maybe I start with Dr. Abdelrahim first, so you can add your intervention. So with the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP27, happening soon in Egypt this November, a large focus will look towards the global goal of adaptation. Adaptation will address in COP the management of water resources, as 2 billion people live in countries where water supply is inadequate. In your opinion, and this question is directed to all speakers, is the solution to an effective management the use of alternative resources from groundwater aquifers, or a mixed approach? And in both cases, why? So for you, Dr. Abdelrahim, if you can start with your answer.
Yes, thank you very much for your important question. First of all, I would like to emphasize on the point that mentioned by Dr. Yusuf, which is the common action that should be taken, because the groundwater doesn't care with the political boundaries or borders, so it flows or it goes through the boundaries without considering the political borders, its flows at the subsurface. Concerning the climate changes challenges, we as an arid region, we are suffering maybe more than other regions in the world from this threat of water resources. So in Libya, for example, we have some oases are going to disappear totally from the Sahara because of the serious lowering of the water level, and some lakes, desert lakes, have been completely disappeared, and so it's a serious problem for us in order to expand our exploitation for groundwater. So as there's an answer for your question, another alternatives should be used for especially for the countries have coastline at the Mediterranean, for example, Libya. So the desalination of seawater is a very good alternative to in order to reduce the stress on the groundwater, especially at the coastal area. Otherwise, the quality of the groundwater is getting worse with time, and after a few or tens of years, we will face a serious problem concerning the groundwater demand or the water demand in general for the different uses, either for domestic, for agricultural, and also for the industrial uses. So the alternatives should be used as soon as possible to reduce the stress on groundwater, according to my opinion.
Thank you so much. Now, for you, Dr. Youssef, the same question. Do you think that using alternative resources would be the solution to an effective management, or a mixed approach by using both groundwater aquifers and alternative resources? In both cases, why?
Thank you. No, definitely a mixed approach is definitely the solution, and not only the mixed solutions. Groundwater needs to be taken in a very comprehensive way, not only as part of water resources or agricultural development. No, they need to be, this resource needs to be taken into consideration while even planning the development of the whole country or the whole region, because it's very linked. It's related to farming, agriculture, linked also to the urban context, industrial. A lot of industries are pumping or impacting groundwater in some way. It is linked to the environmental aspects, coastal areas, and also the other ecosystem related to groundwater, etc. So groundwater resources need to be considered in the whole development agenda of the country or even the region. So now, if we need to zoom on the water resources part, definitely a mixed approach is important, but it needs to be also across the water value chain. At IRMI or CGR, we call it water system. We believe in water system, and to address water security challenges, we need to consider the whole water system. I will give you some examples in this regard. If we divide the reflection on two parts, supply and use. In terms of supply, a lot of aspects or solutions can be applied. For example, enhancing the recharge is one of the solutions that can help somehow in some situations to address the problem, either the natural or artificial recharge. And we do have a lot of successful experiences in this regard in Tunisia, even in Libya, in Morocco, where the aquifer recharge gave good results. The other component always within the supply is quality. We we always forget the quality aspects of groundwater. It's another hidden problem. I thank my colleague, Dr. Abdurrahim, for mentioning seawater intrusion, which is really, really big problem. Most of North African countries, for example, in Morocco, we do have a very big and historic growing area where we do have nothing now, just because seawater intrusion, high salinity, which makes this area inappropriate for growing any type of crops, for example. And it is a real example of this problem in our area. So yes, taking into consideration the quality aspects and trying to reduce any harm that can be done on these resources. Again, another practice that needs to be taken into consideration. As per the uses part, if we can divert any potential use from groundwater use in non-conventional water, yes, we need to do that, and we do have good experiences in the region. Seawater desalination was mentioned, and also the use of treated wastewater is another solution that give a big potential, and we do have a lot of results at IMI in the MENA region, where we see big potential for this resource to revive a little bit the groundwater resources. And the last layer of within the use components is the increase in productivity. If we do really need to use groundwater, we need to use the value for each single cubic meter, and we need to be sure about the destination of this cubic meter. So these are some of the ingredient that can be part of the mixed approach that you mentioned. But there is another thing that's very important, especially in our region, is the policy and institutional level, which is a problematic component here. Even within the same country, sometimes the policies are not really helping in preserving groundwater indirectly because of inappropriate planning, or some administration are not consulting others, etc. The example of solar-powered pumping is a good example, which is making harm in other parts of the world, not necessarily in North Africa at the moment. But since most of our countries in North Africa are now going toward the green transition, where solar power will be again empowered, so we do need to watch this solution very carefully to not harm the groundwater resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yusuf. And now, Mr. Hamdi, the same question is for you. Do you think that the solution to an effective management of groundwater aquifers is the use of alternative resources, or a mixed approach using groundwater aquifers and alternative resources? And in both cases, why? Thank you.
Actually, I am belonging to a currentology who believe that the green economy is hiding a dark side, and including that the alternative way how to using the alternative source of water is how treat wasting water, or extract the salinization, actually, because they have a cost. What we do now is including a solar panel to extracting or pumping water from the south of Tunisia. Actually, is a chaotic decision for us. It's reflecting how the green economy could be a real disaster, because people are now overusing this aquifer by, as I mentioned at the beginning, by 270%. From one side, our government is doing the marketing that we have succeeded to raising the number of solar panels in our country, and we have successfully raising the production of electricity through alternative way. But on the other hand, we are overusing our aquifer, our groundwater aquifer in the south of Tunisia, and actually didn't see that as a wisely decision from our government or our system, how it's oriented. From the other part, extracting also going to using seawater as an alternative, actually also that's a big problem. We didn't have financial resource to supporting such a decision for a long term. It still have a cost for the moment. The solar panel, how to have to use the electricity, the cost of electricity is not something that we can offer for a long period. It could be as an alternative solution for a short moment, but I didn't see it actually as for example, the cost of production of water from the sea for salination process, how much will be the agricultural product, how much will be cost? It's not costing the same using groundwater for aquifers. Now, actually what we have here, we think of differently to using wisely our groundwater and to be oriented also for the alternative source. It's one within the solution, but not be so excited to believe in something is not can be offering how to say is not offering the successful solution for the future. We didn't see it as that, but we see as limited some production area in the agriculture. For example, be not producing here because it's consuming the virtual water that we have consumed, for example, is so high. So we stopped to produce it here and stop to the agriculture for such a product here, and will be oriented 100% by exporting this product. And we can be investing in some product that are using less water resource. That's what we have for efficiency, at least for efficiency for our water. For example, for Tunisia, what we have in water is equivalent of 4.4 billion metric cube of water that we have underground, and all our water resource is that. And how much we export from every year is 5.8 billion metric cube. So we can be using this, our groundwater. What we have seen there is with our resource, we are not able to make the food sovereignty at least. But we can do some amelioration. We can make improvement in that such politics by do some orientation, to do some changement at least in our policy. Because as we see it, for example, to produce 1 kilogram of olive oil, it consumes 7,000 liters of water, virtual water. And that's so high, actually. We are a country with that we have 110 million olive tree. The number was doubled since the revolution until now, because people seeing such benefits in doing something is not need so much knowledge. So everyone now is oriented to changing the crop into olive oil tree to produce olive oil at the base. But it is efficient. I didn't see actually the efficiency for the future. In the short term, okay, it's efficiency because our economic export are rising and we have good results. But the future, some area now, as Mr. Youssef saying, we didn't find water now. We going up to 200 meters to extract water, and it's not reasonable. 10 years ago, it wasn't on the ground. We can extract from 20 meters. Now we're going up to 200 meters. And that's really a chaotic situation. It's not turning into the good situation. So as I see, the mix could be a good solution, but it's not enough. We should be also oriented at efficiency, how to use our resource from efficiency way, with efficient way, sorry.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for these insights. I believe we're having different opinions, but we can conclude from all our speakers that for an effective management, we need to consider the financial capacity of countries in North Africa, for instance, the local context, to what extent alternative sources can be helpful, as Mr. Hamdi explained that we have alternative sources, but to what extent can we use them? We need to address as well the energy capacity. We need to address as well the awareness level, but also we need to keep in mind when you mentioned shifting towards a green economy, to what extent the green economy can be applicable in countries like in North Africa. And again, I will highlight the role of the local context to adapt the green transition or towards a green economy within the region, so we can actually adapt to climate change, especially when we address water resources. And this also highlights the role of actually greenwashing that is applied by some governments in North Africa to show that maybe they are shifting towards a green economy, but in reality, it can be very challenging to keep in mind a country like Tunisia that depends heavily on farming or agricultural activities, but the water supply is inadequate. I have a question also that I want to address to our speakers, but maybe we can keep our answers brief since we are reaching the end of our discussion. My last question: how important is the role of raising awareness around groundwater aquifers between urban and rural areas? I will start with Dr. Youssef first.
Yeah, thank you. No, it is very interesting concept, raising awareness, but I think awareness of the increase of awareness need to be actually focusing not only on urban and rural, but also on the awareness of decision makers, because some of them, they are not technician, and they need to be sensitive to this issue. And here is the role of research and development again. So we need to have evidence on the issue coming from ground-based research and development action. So yes, to make action, we need to be aware of how critical is the situation of our groundwater resources in the region. And since everyone is using this resource, whatever his or her scope, I mean, farmer, industry, decision maker, etc. So we all use groundwater. So we all need to be aware of our impacts on this resource, and also aware of what can be done, everyone from his or her role, to mitigate this impact, because anyway the impact will be there. We can't go forward, we can't achieve development without pumping groundwater, unfortunately, but we need to mitigate it, and we need to increase the productivity and efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now moving to Dr. Abdulrahim, what would you add in terms of raising awareness on groundwater aquifers between urban and rural areas in North Africa?
Yes, I think Dr. Youssef has concluded the answer of the question very well. Awareness should be raised for all levels, starting from the population and passing through the consumers, all the consumers, either for the industry, for the domestic, or for the cultural users, and also for the decision makers. Awareness should be raised for all of these people, especially for the collaboration between the researchers and the stakeholders. There should be a very good collaboration between the research centers and the stakeholders, especially in our countries. There is a lack of this collaboration indeed. So that's I have nothing to add to Mr. Dr. Youssef. He has concluded the answer very well.
Thank you so much. Now to you, Mr. Hamdi, from your experience working on raising awareness, even with international organizations working in the region, to what extent it is important to raise awareness on groundwater aquifers between rural and urban areas?
Actually, what we need, I see as the rising awareness is something very important, and should be as a key solution for the water problem, water crisis in our country and our region even. As I see in Tunisia, we have at least 50% of our sources is wasted before reaching the final destination. And here we talk about, especially about agriculture. So if we working about this topic and raising awareness of some farmer, for the majority of the farmers and the policymaker here, we can at least minimize the huge impact of the water crisis and what take the final shape in the next coming year. So that's one of the most important topics. I see it as the most important, that technical, more important at the technical level, and how we can proceed. We can, through this orientation, at least we can maybe report the problem or the crisis for 10 or 50 years, at least from now. But it's not could be the only solution that we have now, because that's need be gathering all these solutions and looking for a local solution. Actually, what we are looking is not weak, because here, for example, in Tunisia or even in Libya, as I see, that we are exporting a solution from outside of our border. It's not special, it cannot be integrated easily. And sometimes we are surprising why this policy is not successful. For the simple reason, it's not coming from us. It's not coming from our reflection, our local problem. It's something that could happen in other country, in other region, and we try to applicate it here without any taking consideration of the local context. And that's the most important thing. We try at least to making the solution local for the moment, because it should be local, and taking such a country have a different Libya issue is not Tunisia issue. As we share some points together, we share some problems together, we share some crises at the same level, but the solution could not be the same. The solution could be in Libya, but it's not practicable in Tunisia. It could be as well. Tunisia, it's not, we cannot adapt it easily in Libya. So the local context is completely different, and that for international organization, at least we try to make something national solution. National solution is mean taking in consideration the local context, because we have discovered we have losing so much funds, so much efforts about something that is from the beginning is not successful. And that's the most important thing for me. Raising awareness for me is the most important than the technical plan. It could be at the first level, and then we can proceed directly after that if we are making good results at the technical plan, and we can make great results after that.
Thank you so much for this great intervention. Having both the awareness level, but also the policy and governance perspective would support, especially from a local context, would support the effective governance of groundwater aquifers. So before we close, I have a question that I think I would direct that to Dr. Youssef. So from the audience, we have a question. How do groundwater rights work in the region? Can any farmer build a well and pump on their land? Given the chance, how would you change the water rights system in your country? If you can maybe wrap up this question or answer in a minute or two, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Actually, this question needs to be addressed in the very beginning. It is actually the scope of this panel, but yes, it is very. It is actually summarizing the situation. My colleague Dr. Hamdi covered this point brilliantly. In all of our countries in North Africa, we do have good setting of policies that regulate all this kind of pumping and use for agriculture. I'm sure about that in all countries. And as we said in the very beginning, because it is an invisible resource, the policymakers and decision makers are sometimes unable to monitor mainly the use, but also the whole cycle. So farmers generally, they need to comply with the regulation in place in all countries, and they do need to go through a process that I believe in general, this process is here to secure sustainability and durability of this resource. So definitely, I think the answer is every single user, including farmers, need to comply with this regulation. Recently, with the advance and the progress in science and research, we do have some solutions, mainly based on remote sensing, that can help decision makers to monitor, including this unregulated wells that can give a direction to the policymakers about unregulated pumping activities in some situation. So yeah, I think I hope I covered the question.
Thank you so much. I'm sure this question goes on and that the answer could be very intensive, but thank you for your insight. I believe we've reached the end of our discussion today. I would like to thank our speakers, Mr. Hamdi Hashid, also Dr. Yusuf Brozin and Dr. Abdulrahim Hwesh. Thank you for your time and your insights to our discussion today. And thank you for the audience for joining. And you will find the recorded session on MEI.